Yay,
Hello. Hello. We'll just give people a few minutes to come in. We have 0 viewers, so no one's listening to this. Oh, are you watching?
I'm gonna take a nap now.
Okay.
Oh. Enjoy your webinar. What? Try searching for you when you're tired. You're sleeping. Huh?
We're probably gonna just wait about 5 minutes
Job search.
just so people can come,
Okay.
and we'll start. Hello everyone, thank you for coming.
There's so much echo.
Here. There's a lot going on over there, so I'm just gonna move. And hopefully it doesn't come.
This is why! Kevin Chong! You didn't hear that. I really hope no one heard that.
No.
Hello everyone. Does it say how many viewers?
No. No.
Alright, I think it's time to start. It's been about 5 minutes, Cedric.
Okay, we shall go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming today to our webinar. This is our graphics webinar, so we're just going to be going over basically some of the graphic posts that you may have seen on social media, and then some of our brand guidelines in CKI, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end. I'll ask you guys to submit any questions you do have on the link. It's on our Facebook group event page, just because it'll be a lot easier for us to see all of your questions there. So just if you have questions throughout, just post them, have them in the link there, ask them in the link. So I guess we'll start with some introductions. So Sarah, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Wynn. I am the Subregion D Trustee / Membership and Marketing Chairwoman from Missouri, Arkansas.
My name is Cedric. I am from Western Canada District. I currently serve as the Subregion A Trustee and the Membership and Marketing Secretary. I've been kind of looking over the infographics and the uh, uh, marketing stuff that we've been posting from the committee. So, um, yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Karen McLaughlin. I just graduated from the College of New Jersey, and before I graduated, I was the president of TC&J Circle K, and I'm also a graphic designer on the committee. I've graduated. I'm working as a digital designer freelance right now, so I continue using the skills I've been using in this committee after school.
Hi everyone. My name is Anne. I'm from the Western Canada District. I am a graphic designer on the Marketing and Membership Committee, and I was a past Lieutenant Governor for the Western Canada District.
So Alan has left. Don't know why, but he is from the CNH district. He's a freshman and he's also a graphic designer for the committee. Hopefully he will come back. But Alan Pham, he's the other graphics member. So we are using Google Hangouts on Air, and it's just our second time using it. So sorry if there's some technical difficulties, but hopefully everything will pan out. So we're going to go ahead with our presentation now. Francesca, who is the social media liaison, unfortunately is having some technical difficulties, so she won't be able to make it, but I'll be able to help out here. So, okay. So, okay, so, wait, oops, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to go over some of our graphic guidelines that we have. So here. Okay, so hopefully some of you are familiar with the CKI brand guide. But what it is it's a set of standards created by Kiwanis International to help, oops, sorry. It's a set of guidelines to help kind of standardize what we publish for Circle K International. So we actually have a complete guide, and I can link you to it afterwards, but it has a lot of tips and tricks on how to create different marketing material, different headings you can use, the colors and fonts and stuff. So if you're brand new to creating any infographics or any resources, this would be a really great place to start. But there's a lot of flexibility with the brand guide as well, which we will cover. But why we want to use it is it does provide some consistency when you're using or when you're creating CKI resources. And again, it has a lot of tips and tricks. And you can really treat it as a step-to-step guide on how to design things. But the best ways I find to use the actual brand guide is if you have anything official coming out of anything you post. So like CKI announcements, if you have official documentation, amendments, meeting minutes, or letters or addresses to your members or your board members, I definitely recommend sticking to these guidelines just because it'll give it a nice professional look and everything will be uniform. Also, if you're creating any resources, so any documents, guides, step-to-step manuals, or training documents for members as well, this would also be a great way to kind of utilize the branding guidelines. And you can use it for web and social media posts as well. This one I find is a little bit more flexible just because we kind of recommend using more creative freedom, but cover post, event promotions, and websites often use elements from the brand guide. So some examples. So these are the board book, last year's board book, and you can see here that we have our blue stripes that are kind of staple in our brand guide. The carrots are used, the fonts and the colors are pretty standard. So this would be official documentation coming out of CKI International, where we're adhering to our brand guide. Here we have a resource. So this was created by the KFAM committee last year. So again, we have our stripes, orange, the color that's in our brand guide, and the fonts as well still match up. But again, this is official documentation, so it would be important to kind of adhere to our branding standards. And then here we have the website from Capital District, and I thought it was nice just because here we have a little bit more creative freedom, but still a couple elements that come from the brand guide. So again, we have our stripes, and then of course we have our CKI logo here. But one of the most important things to note is that these are just merely suggestions. The brand guide is really just a guide for you to create, but we offer a lot of flexibility. And we want you to have your creative freedom to create a lot of aesthetic appeal when you're creating stuff. So you can deviate from the brand guide in a number of ways. A lot of decons have a lot of themes, right? So if you have a theme district event, it's not really necessary for you to stick strictly with the official posted brand guide. We do recommend that you kind of make it a little bit more appealing, you know, because you're having a themed event. Club events fit the same, social media posts, promotion for specific events or posters, and again, just following your own creative direction. So some examples. This was a district convention from, I think, Michigan District, if I remember right, of last year. So obviously they had a Monopoly theme. Really simple, but not sticking strictly with the brand guide, which is completely okay. But you'll notice that they do have the CKI logo here. So it's still a Circle K event, but with a theme, you don't have to stick with the posted brand guide. Here we have some social media posts. So this was from the service committee for our service week, and promoting one of our promotional partners, JCI. We still have our logo here, and then this graphic on your right for CKIX to join the convention committees. It's a little bit more creative. It offers a little bit more, it's a bit more eye-catching as well. And the thing with LSSP posts or CKIX posts is that they have kind of their own branding guidelines as well. So we have our event color, which is magenta, pinkish, and then gray. So you'll notice that a lot of their posts follow those guidelines, but they're all still under Circle K. And then, of course, some of our infographics that we have been posting this year. A lot of this information is meant to just be more eye-catching, to kind of be more attractive when posted on social media, but they still have a lot of information that is relevant to members. So on the left, we have what are the different levels of Circle K. So this would describe to a member what's different about our organization and the fact that it is international. So we have the description here, but still elements that are important. So we have our logo, our committee logo as well, but also our CKI seal there as well. And then on the right, we have benefits to pay membership dues. So here, the colors adhere to the brand guide, and the fonts do as well. But again, we're taking more elements that offer creative flexibility. And then, yeah, the header for this event even. The background is part of our brand guides because they do have textures that they recommend. The font is similar to some that they recommend, but really it's just showcasing what you want your image to be and allowing yourself the flexibility to do so. So we want you to be creative for sure. So If you have graphic skills and a background that you want to show off, we definitely want you to showcase that. So the brand guide is really just an outline that is flexible in its structure, as opposed to the previous one that was posted. Even using some elements of it will offer consistency, and consistency with all posts that happen in CKI. So hopefully that kind of clears up some of the debate between whether material adheres to the brand guide and whether it doesn't. Okay.
Okay, so there are a couple do's and don'ts, but this is like the main one. Using old graphic standards, for example, the example on the left is the CKI megaphone from the previous brand guide. And then also something to look out for is the copyright infringement. That is a pretty serious thing. Like the example that we use is like the Disney Mickey Mouse is commonly used. So when you're creating themes for your events, just be aware of the things you may be using. It really does happen, and you should be concerned about it because it does cost money if they do find out. So just finding creative ways to come up with like maybe different types of like logos and like themes really help. And then so definitely always use the CKI logo. So for example, we do have a couple options here, like the different colors, just the black seal, the blue seal, the blue and gold seal, or like the normal like CKI, just wording Circle K International. It's pretty well known and pretty well recognized. Even with like we branded our slideshow with the Circle K International and then our M&M logo. All right, but you know the brand guide is what it is. It's a guide, not necessarily something that you have to do. If you like a certain color or texture or stripe, use it, and it is okay to use. You don't have to use the exact color that the brand guide suggests, but that is what we do suggest. But we do suggest selecting one single part of the brand guide to include, just to kind of keep it a little bit consistent. So whether it be the carrots, the stripes, or the color, the font, just don't forget the logo because that's what people recognize.
Okay. So I forgot to actually include the brand
I believe
guide.
we're going to move into a question and answer period. So Cedric will be pulling up the document. You can stop presenting, Cedric, too. That way.
Yeah, give me a second. Okay. So we're gonna now allow our we're going to allow now some of our graphic people to kind of explain some of the work that they have done this past year. So I'll actually have to share screen again, so just give me a second. Okay, so Alan, do you want to start?
All right.
Oh, wait. Give me a sec, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Alan, do you want to start?
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Alan. Sorry I didn't get introduced earlier. There was a technical difficulty because my computer froze, but I'm back. And so for me, I think every graphic designer has a personal style that they like to use. And for me, that meant using a lot of icons, minimalistic designs, and give me Mom, sorry. um, Yeah, so every graphic designer has a very specific style that they like to use, and as I mentioned earlier, I like using icons, very like eye-catching colors with very simple backgrounds, and I also use bordering. So throughout this past year, what I've done is I've made a lot of infographics for the committee, and an example is the International Service Partners. For this design, I made my own icons and I used mainly one font, which is International Service Partners. Um, which is Century Gothic. Sorry, I just read the title of the infographic. Um, and for me, I think that having as little font or as little amount of fonts as possible is always the best way to go because a lot of the times designers like to think that or people like to think that the more fonts and more variety that you use, the more eye-catching it is. Well, it will be eye-catching, but it's also very distracting because there's not a lot of points to focus on since there's so many different elements that are scattered throughout the graphic. So what I've done is I usually only use maximum 3 fonts, but that's already a lot, so I usually keep it down to 1 or 2 fonts. And Cedric, do you want to show the other graphics? Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, I like using icons. So here I created 10 different icons for this graphic, and I only used one font, which was Century Gothic. And I also included the Circle K logo at the bottom and the M&M logo at the top. Um, so yeah, usually what I like doing is a lot more simple and more refined so people can look at the information a little bit more easily.
So, Alan, which program did you use to create this infographic here, and how did you create like the different icons that you see?
So I usually use only 2 programs for my graphics. The first of which is Photoshop, and that's just for me to lay everything out. But when I create all my icons and other elements, it's usually on Illustrator. So everything that you see, if you can see the graphic, like the calendar, the clock, the form, the thumb, the metal and the notes and the dollar signs, those were all made on Illustrator. And then I transferred those over into a Photoshop file and I rearranged all the elements. So for this graphic, which is my CKI story ad, again, I used Illustrator and I also used um, Photoshop. But one special thing about this is that the pencil was actually found on Google. I think there was like a Google photo database, and I used the pencil and I added on there because I liked the way it looked and it was already made. It was reusable. Um, and I think one tip that I have for designers is that whenever you need a graphic or an icon and you don't have enough time to make things, there's always going to be a database online for you to look for different clip art, different icons. And one really good resource, as I mentioned, is Google.
And did you use the same programs for this one as well?
Yes.
Okay. How did you get involved with these programs?
Could you say that again?
How did you get involved with working with these programs when making these designs?
Well, I always learned how to use like Photoshop and Illustrator when I first began designing. So I felt very comfortable with using these to make all of my graphics. I've been an amateur graphic designer for 2 or 3 years now, and these programs are really useful. when you want to design things or make graphics for your organization, especially in Key Club or Circle K.
Perfect. So we will hear from um, Karen now. So let me just pull up some of your graphics here. Okay.
Okay, hi. I also use Illustrator primarily for my graphics. Which it's like Adobe Illustrator is not a free program, but for those of you who are still in school, I'm pretty sure that a lot of colleges or even maybe high schools will have access to the Adobe Suite for like a school program, and I would definitely take advantage of that if you can get access to it, because it's a pretty easy learning curve, and there are plenty of tools, there are plenty of tutorials online that you can find for using Illustrator and Photoshop, and they're definitely the industry standards. If you were to go into a graphic design field, I'm pretty sure that those are going to be the primary graphics creating programs you're going to see out there. There's a couple competitors too, but they also are paid for, so there's probably some free programs you can find, but if you can get access to the Adobe Suite from your university or your school, I would definitely look into that, because it's worthwhile to learn if you're interested in this field. But yeah, so this is one of the graphics that I made, and what I like about this one, I was tasked with just basically explaining the organizational structure of Circle K, and when I got the assignment, it was just like it was up to me to kind of decide how it would be structured and what the text would be, and so I decided to kind of take it from the perspective of like the member and start from there. And that's one of the things that I like about designing, is you can kind of like frame the story yourself and figure out how you want to lay it out. And once I had that idea down, then it was easy to kind of like zoom out on levels of like what the organization like looks like from the member perspective, and just like some good tips for if you're making infographics. It's good to have like a clear flow that people can follow, and so they know like where your eye is supposed to go next and how you're supposed to see the information. And I mean, it's really literal with this graphic, because I have the little like dotted line that you can see going throughout each of the images, so you definitely know which direction to like look. And I think with infographics, it's also important to just make sure that all your information is displayed, like has a visual counterpart. That what makes it interesting to look at is to see the visuals. So, you know, there's like the member and the CKI bell, and each of those kind of helps to explain the text a little better. And also, like, just to be consistent with the way that you style your text, like you can see that under each of the kind of like the focal point of each of the little sections is the level that I'm describing, so it's got the underline underneath it, and so that's a consistent element that's used throughout. And then also just try and have an eye-catching header, because you have to be able to like really quickly describe what you're going to be explaining. You know, a lot of these are going to be shared on the internet, and people have short attention spans on the internet, so you want to like grab them right away with an interesting header. Yeah. You can go to the next one.
Yeah, I'll just say like one of the main things, and I hope that it's been apparent, but with these infographics is just really making them very simple to understand.
Yeah.
And making them very to the point, just because that'll be a lot easier than having like a whole resource on what a subregion is, when this really just kind of describes it step by step. So perfect. Yeah, and then the next one is here.
Yeah, and then this one was it's an interesting challenge, because it's a lot of information that needs to be displayed, and there's less visuals here. You can also see I'm a fan of reusing graphic resources once you've got them created. You could see that bell I used in the previous graphic, just because it's almost a visual identity in itself. Like if you've seen the graphics that Circle K's put out of mine, then you notice the bell again. You can kind of make that connection in your head and know that they're of the same style. They're of the same like like group of graphics, and you kind of instantly have this recognition. This one was a good exercise in knowing how to size your graphics for social media, which is going to be important if you're sharing these graphics. Originally, this was set up so that it was all one column, and what we quickly noticed was that when it was on Facebook as a test, it was just way too long, and a lot of the text couldn't be read. So I put it into 2 columns, and you can see the underlying grid structure with this graphic, which I think is important no matter what you're designing. If you're designing something with a lot of text, you want to have a grid structure so that everything is just lined up nicely. If you were to put a ruler to these graphics, you can see that each of the text boxes start on the same plane. So that's very helpful because it just kind of organizes the information. It looks nice to the eye, and it can really make a difference in that sense. And yeah, just like before, elements that have similar importance have similar styling. So each of the headers has got the same style, and then that subheader for members each of those bullet points looks the same. And for the example on the right, that all follows the same style as well. And for text, I try and make sure not to leave too many orphans, they're called. Is basically if you have text that's kind of on a line on its own, you want to try and avoid that. You don't want to have hanging text. I can see I kind of did that in some places, but it's good to avoid that. And then another thing that I do with my graphics is just picking a color palette out in the beginning. Before I even start anything, it's helpful to kind of have a color palette so you know what you have different colors that you can work with, and that kind of frames the entire graphic. And there's a couple cool websites for helping you pick color palettes. I like colors.co, but it's colors with 2 O's, so COLORS.co, or Color Lovers. It's just cool for helping you pick out palettes that look good. And then next one.
Cool. And then the last thing is actually different. It's the CKI pledge, so hopefully you've seen it. I think I'll play it just in case you haven't, and hopefully it's not too laggy. But
yeah, so that was a really cool assignment. Motion graphics are a whole different playing ball game than just static graphics, but they I use Illustrator to make the graphics, and then Adobe After Effects to animate them. It definitely has a bit of a steeper learning curve to do After Effects, just because you're working with motion now. But I learned everything that I know now online through tutorials, so it's definitely out there. And infographics are really popular right now. Every organization tries to explain what they do through motion graphics, just because it's just they're fun to watch. And sometimes an infographic there might be too much information to display an infographic, and like what Cedric said, you don't want to bombard people with information in infographics, so motion graphics allow people to put a lot more information in and kind of explain their product or service in a really interesting way. And for this motion graphic that I made, some really important things to me were just thinking out the animations ahead of time. So I would do some sketches. This wasn't a very complex animation, but I knew there's some visual puns in there, service through leadership, and the word through comes in on an arrow. So I just kind of sketched that out, but had that idea in my head while I was making it. And this also has a color palette that was predetermined. In the thumbnail right there, you could see those 5 hands, basically. Those were the 5 colors. And also, those transitions that I use, I actually found online for like a free resource that you could use. So just like Alan was talking about before, there are definitely resources online that you can find to help you with graphics, especially if you're not like, if you don't like making icons or things from scratch. There are things you can find as long as you give the right credit where you need to. But yeah, so that's like infographics in motion.
Perfect. So, what's like one of the most difficult things in making a video like this? Do you think?
Just timing it all out, and making sure, like for this one I actually picked the music after, so I didn't, the timing wasn't as great as I wanted it to be, but a lot of times I've done motion videos where it's the beat of the, it just looks a lot better if the beat of the animations matches the song, and that can be a little tedious. And there's just like a lot of little tweaks you have to work on with like timing and easing, it's called. So it's like you can make the timing so that rather than it just kind of coming in where it moves at the exact same speed, it like kind of like moves in real quick and out. And there's a lot of subtle things you have to do with After Effects to keep the motion graphics from looking like stale. So yeah, just like focusing on the little details, it can be difficult and tedious.
Great, thank you, Karen. So we will now hear from Anne, who is our other graphic designer. So you want to go ahead?
Hi. So I'm just going to talk about the program I use because it is different from the Adobe programs that Karen and Alan uses. So I use a competitor program called Affinity Photo. It's a program you can find on Mac only. They're trying to work on creating a PC version of it, but so far it's only on Mac. It was only for $60. I'm not sure if that's US or Canadian, but is super affordable if you're a student. And I did use the Adobe programs before for just like from some small projects, but nothing like what I've done on the committee. So I do have like a little bit of background, but not very much. And I found that using the Affinity Photo was like very similar to the Adobe program, so I went ahead and bought it since it was very affordable. So if you have a Mac and if it's something you are looking into, like a more professional program, like I would definitely try it out. Maybe try the trial version out if you're not sure about committing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Kiwanis family graphic that I made. This was my first infographic, and you can tell that I have a similar style in graphics as well. So my favorite font is called Beavis Noon. So it looks like the title of this infographic, and whenever I create a graphic, I always go to that font. So when you see my graphics and you see that font, you'll probably know it's mine. So, okay. Let's see. Okay, so for this graphic, I really didn't know where to start because I was like, maybe I should make it rectangular, or maybe I should make it a square. But I decided to go with a circle because it really represents how our organization is really like a cycle. You grow up as a kid, and then you end up as an adult, and then you support the kids going into the Kiwanis family. So it's just like a cycle. And then I decided to add like a paint background to see it all flows out from Kiwanis. So K-Kids, Builder Club, Key Club, Circle K, Action Club, they're all under the same organization, which is Kiwanis. So that's why I decided to do that. This infographic is just for clubs. Alan has a separate graphic for just service partners, so you can check that out. And yeah, for consistency, the bottom I added the MMM logo, and I didn't add the a specific Qantas logo because in each little part of the circle it has its own logo. So I didn't want to like put one above the other and add like another logo to it. I think you can show the next graphic. Okay, so this is another graphic that I've done, and as you can see, I use the same font that I always use for the title because it's one of my favorites. And what Karen mentioned about creating a flow for your infographic, I think that is very important. Like what I've done here, I've also added lines to connect one point to another, and it kind of just adds to like the aesthetics of the graphic and makes it easier to look at. What else? And for consistency, I also added the M&M logo and the circle, a Circle K logo. You could move on to the next one. Okay, so this is the social media guide. Okay, so this is a really interesting project. It was definitely one of the longest projects I've worked on. So basically, I tried to update the past social media guide because of the old branding. A lot of the information here in the new social media guide is the same, except for Instagram because the old one didn't have it. So I had to compile some information for what are the pros and cons about Instagram and creating a graphic for it. So that's why this project took a while. What else? Oh, and you can tell my style that I really like minimalistic things. So I try to reduce down into the graphic into just like icons, like what Alan does as well. But you can see that it's a bit different than what he does. Anything else I should add? Cedric?
What do you think was, so what was the hardest thing when you made this one? Because this one's a lot different. So this one isn't an infographic, it's actually a guide, so it's a solid resource.
Yeah, so what wasn't hard was the information. Basically, I copy and pasted everything. But what was hard was trying to figure out later if this was going to be like a book, if people were going to print it off and show members. Like I had to figure out if there were the sizing and where to put things to make sure that when you open it, nothing is off. I did notice there was one part of the triangle that is off when you made it into a book, but it wasn't a huge deal. And creating the page for Instagram was hard also because I didn't have any of the information for it, and I wasn't too familiar with Instagram at the time because I just started. And but with some of my committee members' helps, I was able to create the page.
So did you use the same design program? Like, did you design each page separately and then compile it, or was it just one large document?
No, it was not one large document. So what I did was create each page separately. At first, I just saved it as an image to make it easier to send over to just Cedric and Sarah to review, and then afterwards I created a PDF out of all the pages and then compiled it into one PDF to create the guide.
Perfect. So I will stop sharing now. Hello, everyone. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good idea on some of the infographics that we've been posting and kind of how you can go about in creating them, or even some tips and tricks. So right now we're going to go ahead and answer some questions that you guys might have. Again, for questions, we'll ask you to post them or ask them through the link that I posted in the event page. It just makes it a lot easier for us to kind of see the questions. But, okay, so first question. Okay, so question, what are the best types of designing software if you are a beginner? And then we'll let the entire committee answer. So if anyone wants to answer first.
Like I said earlier, I think that the Adobe Suite, if you can get access to it, is beginner friendly enough. I learned a lot, most of what I know through online tutorials, and you can find tutorials that basically like guide you step by step, where it's like click this tool and make this tool do that. I spent a lot of time doing tutorials where you would like basically like mimic like a graphic that's already been made, and you just kind of like do it yourself. So if you can get access to the Adobe Suite and like specifically Illustrator for graphics or Photoshop for image manipulation or layouts, I think that it's beginner friendly enough that you can learn, and you'll definitely benefit a lot from having those programs under your belt because they are industry standard. Someone else could probably speak to other programs though, because that's really all I've used.
I think one easy tool for beginner designers to use is Microsoft Office. So like if you have PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, those usually are some basic tools that you could use to arrange images, icons, text, and whatnot. They're not as professional, so I'd say if you're a beginner and you really need to make something on the fly, then you can go ahead and try to make like a graphic, or like, yeah, you can make a flyer from PowerPoint, and you could basically just rearrange the, or you can like alter the size of the screen, and it's really easy if you use PowerPoint because you have the freedom to move text wherever you want. You can also add photos here and there too. But I agree with Karen that Adobe Suite is actually more professional, and it's also actually user-friendly enough. I just think that if you want to get more invested in graphic design, you should definitely try learning a few things yourself, because that's like the programs are so expansive, and they have there's so much to cover. Sometimes, like even professional designers don't know how to do certain things on these programs. So really, if you want to take your first step in graphic design, try using Adobe, Photoshop, or Illustrator. It really does help, and you can find tutorials anywhere from YouTube to even if you just Google, it'll be there for you. And the best way to learn is just to keep practicing and to keep trying new things out that you see that you like and you want to try.
Yeah, I'll speak to Alan's point. So I'm not professionally like trained in anything that our designers work with. Like I don't work with Adobe or Illustrator or anything like that. So I actually only use Microsoft Word. So I use Publisher when I make stuff, and I use Paint. And basically, I find it really useful just because it's very user-friendly and kind of intuitive. So it's like if you want to make a triangle, there's a whole function that's like make a triangle. So then you just kind of create that. So I find it really useful, but it does definitely have its limitations because you can't be as creative. You kind of have to use predetermined objects that they have. It's really hard to kind of like create new images. So if you remember Alan's infographic where he has all of his icons, like I could never create that on Microsoft. But if you have like a really simple poster design or something, it is going to be really useful. So I think I'll actually show something. If you can see here, so I made this infographic, or no, this poster for CKIX, and it was all using Publisher. And what I really like about it is the geometric design. So all of these triangles, you just create the triangle, and then you copy and paste it. But what's good is that you can actually group things. So I actually just had to make this hexagon, and then you copy and paste the whole hexagon, and you can group this entire image. So it's not as daunting, but it's definitely really simple. So if you aren't really into getting learning how to use Illustrator, MS Word I find is kind of useful, but it definitely has its limitations. But yeah, okay, I will stop screen sharing. And do you have anything to mention?
No, I think Karen and Alan has covered everything.
Okay. All right, so next question. May we include M&M designs in our newsletter publication if credit is given? Yes, absolutely. So the reason that we created all of this material is because we want you to use it when in your newsletters, in your district updates, in your club updates. It's definitely, we actually encourage you to use. So 100%, definitely use them. We want you to see them all over social media. That's one of the main things, especially because the way that we're approaching resources this year is having these infographics and making them more appealing. So please use them. Okay, so next question. Is there a recent version of the social media guide available? Yep, so we presented it. It should be available on the website. I'm not sure if it is, but I will post it in the event page. So everything that you've seen today, I'll also post on the event page just so you can have access to some of the resources that we have created. So it'll be there. Okay, so Karen, you mentioned you watch a few tutorials. Are there any channels you can recommend for beginners in Adobe Suite?
Yeah, hold on, I gotta remember. I learned on Tuts Plus, I think. I'm looking right now to see if they're still around. Yeah, Tuts Plus has tutorials for the entire Adobe Suite, web design courses, and most of the tutorials are free. And there was a time where I would check them. I would check daily just to see what tutorials they put up. They're really easy to follow. So yeah, I can post a link to that in the group page. For After Effects, I think for my After Effects videos use Tuts Plus, but also I just would find random YouTube pages as well. But that was my go-to for a while, so I'll post a link to that.
Okay. Another question. So, should I use the word mark or the Circle K logo, or both? Personally, I think you can use whichever one you want. I know. So, looking at Karen's graphics, she does use the word mark, but Anne and Alan both use the logo. So, do you guys maybe want to say why you prefer one over the other, or anything like that?
I think that the word mark is just, it's more, what is the word I'm looking for? Shape. It's easier, like the circle is a little more difficult to align with other elements and fit in places. I think that the word mark, because of its rectilinear structure, it's just easier to fit in places, and I like it. Yeah, that's why I use the word mark.
For me, at least, whenever I have to think about whether to use the seal or the word mark, I think about how it looks with the rest of the graphic. So a lot of the infographics that I do have a lot of animation and icons. Sorry. But usually I think about how it fits in with the rest of the graphic. So when there's a lot of text, then I usually try going for the seal. But if there's already a lot of icons, I go for the word mark instead, just for variation as well. And as Karen mentioned, like how how it's arranged with the rest of the graphic really does matter. So it's all about trial and error and like where you think it fits best.
For my graphics, I'm just gonna say I've never thought about using the word mark because I've always had the seal downloaded on my computer and it was what I always used. So that's why all of my graphics just have the seal on them. But I do really like the seal, especially the black and white one, because it really just goes with anything. And I do agree it is a bit harder to work with because of the circular shape it is in, so it doesn't align with everything properly. But you can make it work if you want it to work.
Okay, so another question. How can you change the graphic standards? What is the process like? So, so the official graphic standards are published by, made by Kiwanis International. So those are, that's what's official. Changing that, I'm not really sure how that would go about, to be honest. But one of the main things is even though we publish that as our graphic standards, again, they're really just kind of set in place to give you ideas on how to create your own graphics from that. So the process of changing that is really just based on your creative outlet. So if you want to just take certain elements, just the stripes or just the colors or just even the carrots that are there, definitely just use some of those elements in your designs and that's completely fine. And then another question that's similar is, does the brand guide change? How do I know when it has been updated? So the brand guiding changed 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. That's when we got the big update from the megaphone that you saw in the presentation to a more, I want to say a more modern brand guide. So I don't really know the frequency that it changes at, but that's the branding guidelines that we're going through now, which are the stripes and then the carrots. So how do I know when it has been updated? Your governors will know if there are any changes to the brand guide, and so will your international trustees. So you can definitely use them as resources. But I don't imagine that it'll be changing anytime soon. So the ones that we've displayed today are the current branding guidelines for Circle K. So next question, are there any free programs similar to Adobe Suite or nah? Does anyone know?
I know like GIMP has been popular in the past. I've never used it, GIMP, but I do know that like when I was first learning Photoshop, that was like an alternative. But that's not really Illustrator-y. It's more like Photoshop-like. I really don't know Illustrator. But I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find some resources. Does anybody else know?
You can, I'm not sure, but in the past, you could definitely, well, I used the Adobe Suite for a trial of a month, I think. You could definitely do that. Maybe before you do it, just look up some tutorials and see what you want to try out on the program, so then you know exactly where you're heading, what you want to create with it. And now I think they changed how you purchase it also, so you pay for it monthly. I'm not too sure. But it's not just like a one-time payment for Photoshop or Illustrator anymore, so it's like a monthly thing. So if you want to use it for a month, I think you could just pay for the month. I'm not too sure. Karen, do you know about it?
Yeah, the free trial would work, and I also think that it's even possible to get free trials of like previous versions, so you can like extend your 30-day. They do it in a subscription method now. I know there's also Inkscape. I'm like literally looking them up now. I've heard of Inkscape before. People like that one. I have never used it, but that's a good point to try the trial version. I know that like if you just want Photoshop, they are like just one of the programs. They have pretty good student discount as well for the Adobe Suite. But you can do a lot of the trial if you want to just experience in order to convince somebody else that it's a worthwhile purchase or something.
So Francesca is in Europe. So that's one of the reasons why she can't be here, and her internet is weird or whatever. But she says that you can get Adobe Creative Cloud for just Photoshop, which is cheaper than getting the whole package. And it's an online graphic system, so it's really basic. But I'd imagine that it wouldn't be able to handle like a high capacity design if you wanted to make, so maybe like just something really specific. And then she also mentioned Canva, Canva. So I don't know. She just said Canva, so that might be a free thing to try as well. Yeah, so some of the graphics that you've also seen use Creative Cloud for Photoshop. So I guess that's a good way if you want something free. And then there's also, I think, as Karen mentioned earlier, so a lot of schools will have discounts for your programs. So just, I think, double check with your schools as well. Oh, Canva is the online graphic system. So, yeah. But yeah, check with your school too if you can get a free version of your program. Okay, we'll take a couple more questions just because it's been an hour, so we'll probably take 2 or 3 more questions. So, how do I get involved with the membership and marketing committee? You guys are super awesome. Well, so applications for the next year's committee will be out after CKIX. So that's one of the great ways to get involved, is definitely applying. So you can keep that in mind. But the really interesting thing about our committee this year is that we've actually expanded our committee twice. Just because the capacity that we wanted to do just kept increasing and we were creating a lot of bulk. So we also expanded our committee. So I guess always keep a lookout. I don't know if next year's committee will expand, but they might. So just be aware, but definitely applications when they come out. Okay. Okay, so I noticed that there was some overlapping of the CKI logo for some of the guides you showed us today. So for aesthetic appeal, is that okay to do in certain situations? I don't really... Do you just mean like physical overlapping of the CKI logo? Or maybe specify which graphic. That one's a little bit... We're not sure what you're talking about, I guess, from what I can see. But
I can't think of any of our graphics that, like, you don't want to mess too much or at all, really, with the word marks or the logos. So probably not. Probably it's best to give them their own space, like in the corner or something. I mean, like the one that I can think of is the district convention banner for like the game one, where like the logo was kind of like on the dice.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is like playful, so I guess you could do it once in a while. But it's still good, even if you're gonna like mess with the logo in some way. You can also kind of have it like untouched in the corner and give it its space to just kind of like represent the organization without being manipulated. It's important to have that for consistency.
Okay. So just a couple more questions. So where do you pull ideas for projects? Benefit concert flyers or welcome week graphics? So I guess this one's like, where does your inspiration come from when you're creating a graphic?
I
Um,
just like,
oh,
yeah.
Karen, you can speak first.
I just like looking at other people's work. Sometimes I'll have a couple ideas in my head. Like graphic design professors in the past have told me that like you just kind of want to like first get all the ideas that you have like without influence from outside sources out of your head. So you can do like they're called thumbnail sketches if you want to get this involved in it. You don't have to be a good at sketching, but it's just like to get your thoughts on paper. And once you have all your ideas, like then you can go and search online and see what other people have done similarly. Um, and like I kind of think the more ideas you can brainstorm, the better, because then you can start like getting out that first stream of ideas that may or may not be good, and then you can combine possible like aspects that you like from a few different ideas. Pinterest is really cool. They actually like have a pretty good graphic like resources of graphics that have just been repinned from other places. Behance is very good for graphics as well as Dribble. And I just kind of will search for keywords that kind of have to do with the ideas that I'm already thinking about in my head and see how other people have done it.
For me, what I usually like to do is I like sketching out the layout and how I want to arrange certain elements of the graphic. And usually I just take a paper and I draw little boxes for things that, like where I want to place certain things, and then I try it out on the program itself. And if it doesn't work, then I keep trying over and over again until all the elements fit correctly. But overall, for me, the main thing that I want to get out of making a graphic is how to arrange it first. So that's my base inspiration. And then when it comes to illustrating, as Karen said, there's a lot of resources online. And for me, whenever I want to make an icon or um, some form of illustration, usually what I do is I go on Dribbble, which is dribbble.com, and I just Google or I just search up like different things that I want to draw or create, and then I don't necessarily want to duplicate it. I just want to get some inspiration on what I can do and what I can be flexible with when making the graphic, so all of the elements look good together.
For me, I start by taking if it's an infographic and if it has a lot of text, I really like to put all the text together and just have it in front of me so to see where I can put it. And then from there, I try to work with what I have and work around and see how I can make this interesting, stand out people, and the audience. And then the last thing I would do is look for color. Um, yeah, that's
Just to add on, I think, sorry if we're going a little bit over, but arrangement in design is always a really big thing. And if you want to make your graphic look nice, if you want certain things to stand out, you really have to think about how you want to arrange these elements so people know where to focus on.
Okay. So there's just one more question. Um, where was it? So is the KPI brand guide similar to Key Club International? Uh, I don't know particularly, but I think they are. They're similar elements, but they're both on the website separately. So I think they're similar, but there might be some differences. I'm not entirely too sure, but the brand guides are posted, so you can just review that. Does anyone else have an idea?
Well, I was in Key Club last year, so I've seen both guides before, and I think there are some similar elements. For example, we both use Century Gothic and Myriad Pro, um, but Circle K definitely has more unique elements. So, for example, um, we have the stripes, whereas for Key Club they have a grid or like this grid paper that they like to use. and also for Key Club, I think there's a lot more colors, and they go from like magenta to like navy blue to like this banana yellow color. Whereas for Circle K, it's very like blue, green, orange, and kind of brown.
Okay, so we ran a little bit over time, but um, there's if anyone has any other questions, the question link will remain up on the event page. So then we'll just accumulate the questions, and then we'll post a document afterwards with the general Q&A that you can refer to. But other than that, thank you for watching. The other thing is I'll be posting the presentation in the group as well, and also a link to all the infographics you've seen tonight. And designers, if you can also post some of the stuff you mentioned, like for the free software or anything, that would be good too. So post that in the group, and then all that information will be there. Cool. So thank you everyone for coming. Hope this was helpful. And yeah, share our stuff on social media. Bye.
Journey.